Hi, everyone. Welcome to SPED Homeschool Conversations. Tonight, our topic is about high school and about taking it out of the box. And our guest tonight is Vicki Tillman from Seven Sisters. Welcome, Vicki.
Hi, everybody.
We are so happy to have you here because, like I was telling Vicki before we got on, when I was teaching my kids through high school, I found her site, and it was a blessing to me. And so I'm just excited that she's here to share with us about some ways we can think of high school instead of the traditional means of high school, and not even just traditional public school, private school type of high school, even outside the box of homeschool high school. We're going to talk about just some ways that we can be creative and really, in essence, help our kids more.
Yes.
By doing so. And so, Vicki, I'd just like our audience to get to know you a little bit and your story, your homeschooling story, as well as just a little bit about Seven Sisters. And I guess I'll let you go from there, and we'll see where the conversation takes us. And also for viewers, if you're watching us live, know that you can put in comments and questions as we're going along, and we'd love to be able to get to those tonight.
Yeah, love questions. Yes,
definitely.
Yeah. Well, I'm Vicki Tillman, as Peggy said, and I am part of the Seven Sisters Homeschool team. And like Peggy was asking me if we're all real sisters, and I said, well, yes, we're all sisters in the Lord. So we started Seven Sisters a few years ago as our teens were getting close to the end of their homeschool adventures and going to all graduate. And we said, we can't, out of, almost 30 years just on my homeschooling, and then all of the sisters put together, all those years of experience, just drop and run. Yeah. And we thought, we are called to be Titus women and pass the things that we've learned on to the next generation. And so we started Seven Sisters Homeschool. There's 6 of us.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, but it's 7 sisters. So you know who the 7th sister is? You are. Everyone that visits us is our 7th sister. So we have lots of 7th sisters.
Awesome.
So we love the community of moms learning to homeschool together and supporting each other.
That's beautiful. We do need community. Otherwise, we can get so siloed sometimes, and that throws our perspective off. And so when you were talking to me earlier about the community you had, when we do that, we have people who can speak truth into our lives and set us straight when we need to be set straight, because we allow them to do that. And it's nice when then you can share on a larger whole what you've learned as well, because we need to be receptive to people who have been there before us. And that's what you're doing. You're setting the pace ahead. Behind.
Yeah. So part of what we did is we were going through, we all met at Homeschool Co-op and just really became bonded there, and ended up starting our own umbrella school as our kids hit the high school years, because at that time, a very long time ago, there wasn't a covering for our kids in the high school level, and we needed to kind of make the state happy in those days. And so we started an umbrella program so that the kids could kind of graduate with a transcript. Now, these days, homeschooling is so common, it's like, yeah, whatever. But in those days, we wanted a little more oomph. So I ended up, because I also have a paying job to work as a counselor, and so I have training in school counseling. And so I worked as the academic advisor for the umbrella school. So between my own special needs kid and then the various different kinds of kids we had at the school, I had lots of opportunities to help families find ways to make homeschooling work for each of their kids, which is why we're homeschooling, is to do what's
really is. So you don't need to have a special needs child to customize. Definitely.
Yeah. The beauty of homeschooling is that customized, individualized education.
Yes, it is. It's beautiful. And I think that the sooner we embrace that, the easier it becomes. We can kind of let go of all those preconceptions of what school should be in my home. And we start taking our focus off the curriculum and we start looking at our child. And that's a lot about what we want want to talk about tonight is
Yeah.
how to do that and how to keep
Mhm.
that focus versus, I mean, we always get pulled back,
Yeah.
in that direction. So definitely. So, and all your kids are graduated now?
Yeah, my oldest is 38 years old, and the baby's about to graduate from the University of Delaware in just a couple of months. My second son just finished defending his dissertation last week, so now he is Dr. Tillman, and we are all excited about that because that was a long journey for him.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah,
definitely. Well, that's great. Yeah. You have so many resources about high school,
Yes.
because that's really where you focused on, it sounds like, with your umbrella school, and developing ways to, justify your high school, which I think a lot of us sometimes do. I know when I started doing high school, I'm like, how do I prove what I'm doing? And so you keep a lot of good records, which is not a bad thing.
Yes.
But you've learned a lot of things through those years too. And I kind of want to start talking, before we talk about how to do it right, can we talk a little bit about how we do it wrong, and maybe some warning flags that, if we're headed down this direction, maybe we should take a step back, looking at high school, because especially for those that are just thinking about high school, maybe they're 7th or 8th grade, but the anxiety is already going up. I heard it said once that the two greatest times of anxiety for a homeschool mom are when they teach their child to read and when they start high school.
Yes. I remember when we were having our kids in middle school, we got a whole bunch of middle school homeschool moms together and just started praying, because we were all nervous wrecks about like, oh my goodness, can we do high school? So we called them rap groups, because back in the old days, rap meant you're sitting around having a conversation. So we would pray and talk about what our goals were and all. But my kids were totally grossed out because rap meant something else, like it's like, you're doing what? So, but I think that leads to the first red flag is if you feel paralyzed by fear.
Yeah.
That we really, it's so hard to have fun with high school, and high school is the best time to homeschool high school.
Yes. I wrote that in my notes as I was reading through the stuff you sent me. I'm like, these are the best years.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And so when we fall into fear, we can take that to the Lord, and we can find other homeschooling sisters. So, you've got a great Facebook community, and at Seven Sisters Homeschool, we have a Facebook community. There's a bunch of high school communities out there, the blue collar homeschools, and it's not hard to homeschool, and you can join the online communities or the in real life communities. And get lots of support. So the fear means to turn it over to God and find some friends.
Exactly. Yeah. And I found my fear and anxiety would start getting that wedge between my child and my relationship too. And when I found that my child was fighting with me, something was wrong. And it was because of me, not because of my child. But it was all generated because of the fear. They're not going to do enough. We're not doing enough, or, and all of that. And it just starts to come out with how you speak to them, how you react to them not doing well. I mean, they're going to fail. I mean, we just have to realize that. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. We do have pressure for performance. And, we want to make sure our kids succeed. We don't want to do something wrong and mess up the rest of their lives. So it's part of our pressure to perform as homeschool moms, but also the pressure then we can put on our kids to, you got to do this right, kid. So, like your whole life is determined by this. It's like, no, it's not. So.
Exactly. Yeah. That's some very good advice, because we can get so wrapped up in that performance thing, and especially I think it is for parents who have kids that struggle. We feel like we have to prove all the more that we're doing it okay. That our child, because we're told by professionals that we can't do this. And yes, you can.
Well, yeah, and that is really hard when you get pressure from professionals who say, no, really, you need to send these kids to a real school so they get the real supports there. And that can be like guilt trip for us moms.
Yeah.
But, you know, and sometimes that is what a kid needs, because there's not one right way to educate your kid. But so many times God has a special individualized plan for that teen. And even with special needs, you know, we have wisdom and we have resources available to us, but nobody knows our kids like we do.
Exactly.
And so homeschooling can be the most beautiful thing you can give a kid with extra needs.
That's you said it perfectly. Definitely. Yeah. And, you know, I found with my kids too, when I hit those blocks, I would, like you said, step back and pray. What are we doing? What do I not need to do? What do I need to change? And, you know, God would just like drop something in my lap about, you know, and something I hadn't even had to research. It was just came by and was like, oh, that's what we're supposed to do. And in the end, you know, you look at it now, years passed, see, that was exactly what we were supposed to do, because they needed that skill for what they're doing now. And I would have never known it.
Yes.
So
yeah. We always say, mom's mind plans her way, but God directs their paths. Yes. And, you know, God knows what our kids need. And you're right. You know, I can look at some of the unusual or off the wall things we did and we go, oh, you know, that wasn't that important. And my grown kids will come back and say that was a formative moment for them. Yeah.
Don't dismiss those. I think we do too often dismiss these, what we call non-academic things that we either do or our kids are involved in. And they end up being the most academic and stretching, growing times that our kids can have.
Yeah.
Definitely. So we're going to talk about how do we do this? How do we even start on this road of saying, okay, I've got this idea in my head of what high school should look like. And it doesn't mean we throw it all out the window, though, does it?
No. I mean, really, they do need to have an education. It just needs to be an education appropriate for them. So we know our kids do, when they graduate, they will have some kind of a transcript.
Yes.
And on that transcript, there needs to be some courses. So the wild thing is in the world of homeschools or private schools, there's not in most states like you have to do these things.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we have a lot of flexibility to mold our kids' education to fit them.
Yeah.
So I've noticed that at SPED Homeschool, there's links to Homeschool Legal Defense Association and the resources they have there on what state requirements are or suggestions for different states.
And also coming out next month, because next month we're going to be focusing on testing and evaluations. We have one blog that's coming out on every single state and what they require as far as reporting. It does not exist, and so I've spent a lot of time digging through legal stuff and getting that together. But that's it's important that you know what you have to report, what you don't. It's.
I'll have to link to that at Seven Sisters Homeschool. That would be great. So really, then we know that our kids have to have courses, and they will have to have some courses in language arts. They will have to have courses in math, in social studies, in science, in phys ed, in fine arts. They need electives, but we get to tailor those according to what their needs are. And we really want to do that. So one of the things I generally ask moms to do is to sit down with their teens and say, what are the things that you love?
Yeah.
And say, how can we pull that into education? Because if you've got something a kid loves already, you can leverage that for a lot of creative things.
You really can. And, if you think creatively,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things that they're doing in their free time
Mm-hmm.
can be kind of covered in subjects, can't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And then we ask the moms and the teens to talk about what their skills are, what their strengths are, because even a teen, and teens generally don't believe in themselves very much. They're at that age, they really have a lot of self-doubt. But
Mhm.
but if you nudge them a little bit and remind them what you've seen, you can
Exactly.
identify, and they can identify things that are strengths, that like God put these gifts in them. And then
Mhm.
that also gives a leverage on how to shape classes and
Right.
courses that you choose.
Mhm. Definitely. And it's a time of trying to figure out what, I for my son, we tried some things,
Mm-hmm.
and about 3 weeks in realized this was not the way we were
Yep.
supposed to go. So we kind of tweaked it. I
Yes.
mean, and so we didn't stop doing computer skills,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what we ended up calling it, because it
Yeah.
started out as IT, and then it moved into, some other areas of, he built a computer, he did all these, but we ended up giving it a very much broader name on the transcript versus, what we started out with. But it didn't
Yeah.
mean that we didn't start out in the wrong place. It just
Yeah.
migrated.
Well,
And
and that's it. And because a lot of those things you don't know till you get there.
yes.
And that's another beauty of homeschool, is we can be flexible, and we can also not ever waste a moment, because all of
Yeah,
life is education. You just got to give it the right name.
exactly. I think I had somebody ask me once, and I don't know if you have another suggestion, but they said, how do I come up with the names
Yeah.
for these classes that I'm teaching my student, because they kind of involve a lot of stuff? And I said, well, just pull up, what your local community college calls it,
Uh-huh.
and go with that. But are there other resources as far as, how to name subjects on a transcript or come up with?
That is really a good thing to talk about. Yeah. If you look a lot at the basic courses in like a public school transcript,
Yeah.
what you'll see is a lot of times, maybe at 9th or 10th grade, they have, language arts 1 or integrated math 1 or,
Right.
social studies 1. But a lot
Mhm.
of times by junior or senior year, it's like, British literature, or independent computer skills, or IT, or marine biology. So you can
Exactly.
specialize, and
Mhm.
it still falls under the right heading. So British lit is a language arts credit. Marine biology is a science credit. Um,
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
we would sit down with our kids when we were advising the different families and say, what was most of the time spent on this. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
yeah. So we've had kids do their American history credit in like Civil War studies or World War II studies. Because a
Mhm.
lot of times boys are really wanting to explore those kind of
Exactly.
things.
See if they
Um,
can build something from that time period, or
yeah, yes,
make a costume. Yes.
so, yeah, they build, catapults for the Middle Ages, and,
Mhm.
and log those hours. So
Yeah.
then just to allow themselves to have a creative name that really gives sparkle
Yeah.
to the transcript. In fact, I
Mhm.
heard that once from an admissions officer at one of the workshops I went to at one of the colleges. And she says, really, for kids who are college bound, it's
Mhm.
really gives kids a little bit of an edge if they have a sparkle title, um,
Ah,
because
uh-huh.
if they've got 1,000 transcripts that all say American history, and then they
Mhm.
have one of American military studies or something, then that
Yeah.
one stands
Uh-huh.
out as like, this is a kid who can take a topic of interest and invest in it and explore it.
That's
So
so true. And it's becoming such a divider,
mhm,
that kids that don't just take tests, but they really delve into subjects.
right.
Kids on the autism spectrum, they do that naturally.
I
So
know.
use those
Yes.
skills that your kids
Yeah.
have. have, definitely.
Yeah, that ability to focus in on something is a gift, and they need a subject or two where they can just take it and run with it.
Definitely. Yeah, I know mechanical engineering was my son's, and we started in 5th grade of doing building structures, and and it's not a wonder now that he's becoming an engineer. But it was one of those passions that he had, and you learn to follow it at whatever degree they can get in.
Right.
If you need help, find somebody. Don't
And what we would do with our kids when they were doing a specialized topic like that, like we would toss the textbook, especially with things like science and language arts and social studies. At high school level, they don't have to cover a certain scope and sequence to get a credit. They just need the Carnegie unit. So,
can you talk a little bit about those so that our audience gets a better understanding of what a Carnegie unit is?
Yeah, so high school is the way they assign credits in a lot of states. Now there are a few states that do it a little bit differently, but a lot of states use a Carnegie unit. And what they say is for 120 to 180 hours of logged educational experiences, the Carnegie organization will assign a credit to that. And so if Carnegie organization says that's cool, it's cool. So some states it's just 120, and like in the Delaware, Maryland area where we are, it's 135. And then some states want to have 180 hours. And so we just make these log sheets. We just print up make a grid on our word processing thing and print it up, slap it on the wall beside the kid's computer or on the refrigerator. And we just, every time they spend an hour doing something related to that topic, we write it in what they did. Now, for kids who are real responsible, they wrote it in. And but if they weren't quite at that maturity level, I wrote it in. But when they hit the number that they were aiming for, then they had earned their credit. And then we could name it the thing that they were aiming for or the thing they spent the most time on. So it really was. Then we had concrete. Spent 2 hours watching this history film about this time period, or we spent 5 hours at a field trip related to that historical period, or did this hands-on project for 4 hours, or wrote a paper and for 15 hours or something. So until it was all filled up.
Right. Yeah, that's really cool. I know we're doing an interview at the end of next month or the month after with a new device that you can just tap it and it tracks all things like that, and then it'll build basically the output for you. And I'm excited to talk to them about this because it's a device that was meant for using in the public schools. But so when we do that would make
clickers that they use in college. Is that what that is? And
tap track. It was meant for keeping track of observations to send to doctors for special needs children. Tracking things like that, but we're going to talk about how to use that to track your homeschool stuff.
You just made my whole day. I can't wait to watch that and find out about it.
Yeah, there's just so many innovations out, but like you said, keeping track of those things, it can be a kind of time consuming though, because it is kind of all over the place. And how do I log it? But yet in that, it allows you a lot of freedom as well. Because you're not like stuck into, this is your history book, this is where you have to spend your 4 hours a week in order to get all your hours. It opens up a world of a lot of other possibilities.
We would like to sit down with our kids when we were doing just logging Carnegie hours and say, what are the things that you are most interested in? And work with them to kind of outline a list of things and experiences that would be good for them, that they could really be sold on.
Right.
And then we could just check down that list over the year. And of course, we would add plenty of the things that we knew that would be enriching for them. And we'd have our input on the list also.
Well, and then as things come up, like if there's a museum exhibit that falls in that category, add it there, put the days that are on there. You know, it's almost like you would have like an ongoing to-do list that you can keep adding to till you get enough hours.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. You know,
Yeah.
So do you just keep track of those in like a homeschool or like a planner type of thing? Or
right. So I would have the master list either on me or taped to the bedroom door according to the kids' personality. So some kids, they didn't want to think about the list. They were just doing their thing. Right. And then the log sheets themselves, our refrigerator has been covered with, you know, here's your phys ed log sheet and here's your social studies log sheet. And then the kids who had a stationary computer, there would also be a log sheet there, especially for things they were doing online or our kids in their umbrella school, because of Delaware requirements, had to have a computer literacy credit, which I thought was hilarious because these guys are all digital natives, but like whatever.
Exactly. I remember one time that said that our kids look at the internet like we look at the toilet. It's like one of those things that they just expect to be there.
Yeah.
You know, that I just had to laugh because yes, it's so true.
Yeah.
And having a credit in that. Maybe the teachers needed the credit, not the kids.
That made my whole day. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So I've just used one of those regular student planners, and then we just write in those things. Especially for my high school students, and I know I think I started out my first year with one 4-year planner for my oldest, and by the end of the 4 years, it was so torn apart. Don't do that. It goes through a lot of stresses. So
I know one year in our homeschool co-op, we were all over at our Seven Sister Maryland's house and a snowstorm set in. So we were snowed in overnight, the whole co-op at her house. Wow. And it was quite an adventure. So what we did is our kids were middle school. So we started a 4-year plan for our high schoolers. And we planned out 4 years of co-op. It was a great plan. It lasted about a year. But we had a lot of fun making that 4-year plan.
Yes, plans are made, but then they definitely do change over the years. And that's a really good point to make to parents too, is that your student probably may start out saying, I want to do this when I get done with high school. And it never stays that way, does it?
No. And my kids, even at college level, some of them tracked in different directions because they don't know everything when they're starting out high school. Now, I had one of my kids, my daughter, who didn't love academics, but she loved photography. From the time she was in 8th grade, she says, I'm going to be a photographer. And I said, you can't earn a living doing that. And she says, I'm going to be a photographer. And I'd say, you can't earn a living doing that. So we made sure over high school, she had different electives that gave her flavors of other careers. Yeah. So we, did early childhood education, and we did all kinds of different field trips that gave her ideas of other careers. Then she went to college and studied photography, and she's now a photographer. So she knew from the beginning. But my other kids have wandered along the way until they landed on the thing that was right for them. So so they may start out high school thinking that I need to do this. And then so you invest in that. And then another interest comes along that they just didn't know about before. But nothing is ever wasted.
So true. Yes. And I think there's a good, flip there that you're talking about is don't allow your child to just do that one thing either, because that may not be that one thing. And so you gave your daughter the ability to see other avenues that she could explore, because what if she did get to the end and say, I don't like this at all, but she had through high school then enough experiences to say, I am definitely sure this is what I want to do. So, I think we can look at it from both directions. But yes, I've had them both as well. And my oldest son wanted to be in the military the first year. He wanted to do an underwater welding career the second year. And then
That's
the next
marvelous.
year went into welding, which he did go to welding school his senior year, came back from welding school and said, I cannot work with those guys. And so I said, well, then pray about it, because I don't know what you're supposed to do. And here's the student of mine as a junior was taking calculus classes, and I knew he was smart enough for college, but he needed some life experiences to get him towards that.
Yeah.
So, nothing, like you said, nothing is ever wasted during our high school years. And it's nice when we can allow them the ability to kind of flow with those interests and try things out.
And I think part of what's important is that teens very often do not believe in themselves.
Yeah.
And so we do want to do some gentle nudging or inspiration. And to get out of the box and go on field trips and get involved in service projects and try different homeschool groups or church groups, not because that's their calling or because they love it, but because any experience is going to broaden who they are, and it will guide them. Like your son had the experience of taking some welding and found out the culture was not his thing. Right. And the only way to know that is to try that. Our kids, when they do service projects that may not be, they're going to go be missionaries or they're going to spend their life, doing that kind of service, but it develops their character and their fortitude for things that may be challenging. Because, hey, I got through that service project, so, I can probably do other things.
Yeah, their character matters so much more than their academics. Yes. And when we get so focused on, these are the classes we need to teach our child, and we forget about the child, who then becomes an adult, and leave your home. Have you done good to them in raising them the way they should go? No. If we don't. Unfortunately, it's a sad statistic that a lot of homeschool kids have been even leaving the faith of their parents, just because we've been so rigorous about making them successful and proving that homeschooling works, instead of looking at our child that God gave us to raise for his glory.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's important thought is also, God has given our kids to raise in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. But as a teen, that raising looks very different than when they were elementary school or even middle school age, that we need to help them to draw their faith out and to ask questions. And teens very often will ask really hard questions. And I've noticed with a lot of the special needs kids, they've got big questions for God. And some of them we can't answer. And it's so tempting for a mom to say, I'm going to tell you how to think about this.
Right.
Rather than to sit with them while they wrestle and believe that God can get them to the other side. And so it's in character formation. We can't character form them from outside. We help God bring that out of them by love and experiences and being with, but that telling them how they're going to think is not as effective with a team. But the kids who've learned more about wrestling ideas and trusting God to get to the other side of those wrestlings do much better as adults, staying with the faith and defining it for themselves.
Well, because it's theirs. It's not yours, definitely. And they have to know how to do that. And there's a safe place in your home in high school for them to do that, to fail. It takes a lot of grace and a lot of forgiveness on your part as well as theirs. And I think if you hit that, that's when high school becomes really beautiful.
Yeah.
When your child knows that you are on their same side.
Yeah. Yeah. And teenagers fail. They do stupid things.
Yes, they
because
do.
I mean, us grown-ups fail and we do stupid things, but teenagers are even more prone to, because they just don't have the life experience and the impulse control that we do. And to give them the grace when they fail or do things in a different way than we would have done, is that we are modeling for them what life should be about.
Yeah. Definitely. It's, we have to be okay with our fallenness as well as theirs.
Yeah.
That's where that comes from. So when we were talking about credits and logging hours and things like that, now what happens if, like, say my student is doing one subject, but yet it could be another subject as well? How do we handle that?
Yeah, well, that's one of my very favorite things. So we call it combining credits or double logging. Sounds kind of like cheating, but it's really not. All right, so take, for instance, your kid is doing American history this year. And for American history, your kid gets into crafts of the era or food of the era. And so you do projects, craft projects and cooking projects, or read some books on, that topic, if they find some historical fiction that they love. Well, the crafts, so our kids have done crafts, food, and music of American history of, the different eras. Then we would log the music and the crafts over on our fine arts logs.
Okay.
As well as their American history log, because they were learning both art, with the art and the craft and the music, and they were learning history. So they, for 1 hour of educational experience, they got time on both of those credits. So, and it very, very valuable time too. And then if there was a historical fiction that they wanted to read or biography, then that would go towards their American history time and towards their book list for their language arts. So that way they're getting a book for both American history and language arts. So you're not wasting time. In a traditional school setting, nothing is related. So your language arts aren't related to your history. It's all siloed, and you could never do that. But in homeschooling, we can integrate as much as we possibly can, and then we just want to record keep, which is a pain in the neck, but it's just a part of life. And so you record keep so that it shows their quality education to best advantage.
Yeah, definitely. And because that's why we did unit studies through high school. And I know it's something that that's why I think I was drawn to your site, was because we did Konos for my oldest, and then it just didn't work very well for my other two, because they were so niche oriented. And so, but I love that, because we'll be listening to an audio book, which is period related, and listening to Anna Green Gables for the first time, because my boys never wanted to listen to that.
Isn't it wonderful? Yes.
But then, you can build in those different things and not feel like, oh goodness, we've got 6 hours of stuff to do today because each subject needs to be taken care of.
Right.
Instead, they can combine them, and then they've got other time to work on things that probably still are educational. It seems like, when we let our kids go from forcing them to do school, they want to learn more. It's as much as we can to allow them to be inspired and to be excited. Now, for a lot of kids, they're not going to be inspired by math unless they're a mechanical engineer. Some kids are born loving math. So I had out of 5 kids, 1 actually liked math. So, but the rest of them, it was like learning disabilities, or I just don't like this stuff. But that I always told them that's character development.
So that's
So
what
true.
math is about.
Yes,
And
but discipline.
but for the courses that don't have to be character development, if we can make them full of life for them, they graduate excited about learning and can take that into life. So it really like matters. So
it really does, and I think we downplay how important that is, because we're so focused on, is this worth a credit? Is this a class subject? But having that perspective, like you were saying, of what do they need when they're out in the real world? You know, what do they need? And oftentimes I will tell parents, when you first start high school, make that list. What do they need to know before they can leave this house? Because I tell you, when they graduate, and I don't know if, especially when I first graduated, I had this conversation with God, but he doesn't know enough. I didn't do everything.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the reality of it. They do. And you have a point where you're hands off. And have you done your job? Because you're not going to be thinking, did I teach them enough math or language arts?
Yeah. And they will learn to run with it. I know my son who has dyslexia, it was just such a struggle learning to read. And then at some point in high school, he was reading Lord of the Rings, but it was an act of God, but also he made up his mind, this is what he wanted. And then somehow that led to, maybe I can learn, so he got his confidence there and was able to then really build a transcript that gave him experiences that built on his love of learning. But he didn't know that, excuse me, at first.
Yeah, allowing them to struggle and see where they can move past. That's a hard thing, because oftentimes we feel like, I just want to help them out, make it easier. But if you can find a way that their difficulties intersect with their passions, it'll push them beyond their difficulties, because that interest level goes up. And especially with kids with dyslexia, it's my middle one, and that's his struggle too. And for a student who could not read, his passion is stories. And I kept saying, how does this work? How do you, but we did a lot of movies and things like that. And so, we got 20 minutes left, and I definitely want to get into, like, what are some creative ideas, that we can really start thinking, instead of textbooks, what other resources can we pull from that are educational in content, and educationally rich in content that we often don't even think about. So excuse me, as we're logging hours, some of the things that have been so rich for my kids is actually movies. So especially, I lean into history a lot because it's so easy with history. To get even historical fiction is going to give them some culture, and give them setting, and then makes good discussion on what is okay, how accurate is this and not, and we can log discussion hours out of that. So movies has been really, really important in my kids' development. Also, we found that a lot of times there are movies in the science fields that we will be able to track at least a few down. So, hey, and a movie's a couple of hours, so we would log those hours. Also, my kids tended to love documentaries. Yay. And so we could find good documentaries on PBS and on History Channel. And then now that there's YouTube and TEDx and and one of our partners, EW SPED, actually goes through a lot of YouTube videos and sources out the best educational content. And so if you go on their site, you can hook to some really neat educational videos. And you don't have to.
What is that one again?
They're called EW SPED, EWCED.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, and it's a newer site, but yeah, I interviewed her a couple months ago, and they go through and they even give you some like questions to start discussing, and they're open-ended type questions. They aren't just like question you get the right answer because you watched the video type of thing, but it gets you thinking. So
and that's so good to just sit and have some discussions with kids about the video. So they did a lot of documentary watching, and I'm glad there's so many resources now. Then another thing is to do lots of field trips.
Yes.
So there is nothing like going and seeing something. So if there's a way to cook up, you know, how this connects to language arts, to history or science, cook it up, even if it's a little contrived, because the experiences are part of character development and thinking, and you know, they will get some learning out of it too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Those are things they remember as well.
My kids still tell stories about the field trips they were on, and some are the nightmare stories. One of my kids went with the co-op moms, and I wasn't on this field trip, and they were going on a science field trip to a cave where there were bats because it was biology year.
Oh, okay.
They got lost and never found the cave, but they did have a field trip to the mall, so they did comparison shopping.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah,
so it's never wasted. Yeah. So another thing is interviews. So if they have a chance to interview someone, you know, if you've got an expert at church or in the family in a science area or history area. One of our kids, one of the homeschool moms, her dad was a Latin professor. So he would teach the kids Latin and apologetics because that was his specialty there. So that was a way to, he would give history integrated in. So on an ancient history year, we could get some hours out of that besides a little bit of Latin credit. So none of them studied Latin in college or anything. It was just a good experience.
It is. It's a good basis to understand where a lot of our words come from.
Yeah. And then hands-on projects. You know, the kids do a lot of that when they're little. And then a lot of times we think, oh, we've outgrown unit studies, but we don't.
Yeah, those hands-on projects when they get older, especially, you know, those are life skills. You know, if you know how to build, you know, something with the Chinese instructions that you buy at the store, that's a life skill, definitely. You know, how many people go to YouTube just to watch how to do stuff, you know, like put brakes on their cars and all these things that you could fill a whole credit with just life skills, you know, and things like that, or auto mechanics. So just off of YouTube, you don't even have to be an expert at it.
Well, we've done so many, especially in history, like to this day, I still have pot holders and stuff that they made in ancient history class at co-op. So, but also science, that there are endless projects a kid can do that we can make into a hands-on project. Like in biology, you know, a lot of times if a kid some kids want to go to college and have an intense biology textbook experience in high school to do that. If they don't have to mess with that, they can take the biology interests that will matter in their life outside of high school and do projects like nature journals and learn, you know, tree identification and bird identification and do what they see over the year, you know, as things, the trees and the flowers and the different birds that are in the yard, and just record that in a journal.
Work in hiking, then you get FIED covered too.
Oh, you bet. Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. You know, they're when they're doing chemistry, you know, all of their lab experiences, you log all that down and just go online to Easy Kitchen Chemistry. And, you know, log those different experiences that way. And then some of that, you know, if they can do some ancient experiences, you know, from the early days of chemistry or something, then you can log a history hour out of that. So make the most of your time.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, as you're talking about it, it sounds so easy, but I think it becomes easy when we take a step back from making it so difficult.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and I can make it sound easy because, I did it for so many years.
Right.
But starting out, it felt a little more intimidating. And I did have the blessing of having my 7 sisters around me so we could co-op together and learn together.
Mm-hmm. But then now everyone else has the experience of having your website to be able to go to be mentored as well. And you have some great resources on there and also for those of you that are watching you have a guide, a PDF guide that you shared with me and that I'm going to give a link to both on the feed here on Facebook, but also on the YouTube channel so that you can find that. And it's a lot about high school credits.
Yeah.
And how to think of that and a little bit of what you've been talking about, but a lot more also that's in there, and links, lots of links to things.
Lots of links. Yeah.
Your website with different ideas. You have some curriculum as well.
Yeah.
To help.
Yeah, and we really did. Because in between all of us sisters and all of the kids we homeschooled, there were so many different kinds of learners. So some were very remedial level, and some were, the high-powered honors going to college stuff. And so we had to make our curriculum adaptable to the different levels. Yeah. So there's study guides and elective courses that really that you can take in any direction your kids need, because kids, they let us know what works and doesn't. And so we know the adaptable things for the different kids.
Exactly. And I think that's nice if you can find a curriculum, like unit studies often will do that, or in general, is they give you a wide variety of ideas.
Yeah.
And I think when I first bought my Konos curriculum, my son started in first grade, it was like, I loved what Jessica said when I watched her first video. She said, and you don't need to do all of this.
Yeah.
It wasn't how this was written.
Yeah.
It was written to give you ideas. And so I said, okay, all the music stuff goes out the window, because my boys, whenever you turn on
they said, no way. Yeah.
They got their fingers in their ears and they're like, so that was not something. We did music differently.
Yeah.
Through singing songs. But yeah, it's, when, again, you can tailor it.
Yeah.
Like, if you're still doing the same subject. And I think we get so we got to be comprehensive. I have to teach my child everything, but we live in a society where things are changing so quickly. We can't teach them everything anyways.
There's no way. There's not, even if the kids go to college and get a PhD, they still won't know everything. But if they love to learn, at least love to learn what they're interested in, then that's the tools. And that really is, we want our kids to at least vaguely like what they're doing. And so we try to aim for that as a goal. So if there's a course they need a textbook and they want to use, well, they're not textbooks, they're online. If they want to use that, then they can adapt it for their needs. And there are a lot of creative ideas on how to have fun too, because we say we're mostly high school, mostly fun, and there's not one right way to homeschool. So you can do it to do what's best for your kids.
Yeah. I think we can get siloed into saying this is the only way, this is the way it worked for my child. And then you have a second child and you go, oops, that didn't work, because now this child's completely different. And so allow that time to be7. And so your website is it?
It's 7 Sisters.
Number 7.
Oh, the number 7, sistershomeschool.com. Yeah. And we also have the Homeschool High School podcast. So we talk about all things high school and mostly have fun with that too.
That's great. Yeah, because what we talked about tonight is just the tip of the iceberg, really, for high school, because I know I'm speaking at the homeschool conference in Minnesota next week, and I think half of my talks are on high school related with special needs. Because there is so many things that we can delve into and just be creative about.
Yeah.
And so we hope that in this last hour and this time with Vicki that you've kind of opened up with high school doesn't have to be this scary thing.
Yeah.
We kind of started out on that with this whole subject of fear and how we can approach this. I know I remember sitting in the very, as we were in middle school, I went to one of these homeschool high school things and they were saying, your child needs this and this and this. And I'm like, I left more afraid than I got there. Like, this was not helpful at all.
Yeah.
But we hope it was helpful for
Yes.
and that it gets you tapped in with Vicki at sevensistershomeschool.com and all that they have to offer. And on our website, spedhomeschool.com too, we have a high school checklist for you that'll kind of take you through even writing an IEP and a transition plan. Those are things that we haven't even touched on in this hour, but some things that definitely help, especially if you have a child with more profound issues and you need to track some of those things. So yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Vicki. This has been fun, and I'm excited to keep a relationship going with you guys because you definitely have a lot of resources that I think will help our parents to not feel so anxious about these years. And I think a lot of times even people that homeschool up to this age, they think, well, high school's too hard. I'm going to send them to school. And that's the easiest years, really.
High school is fun. Not every moment of it, but high school is fun.
Exactly.
Like when I look back over all of the years of homeschooling, the high school years were the best because the kids really have a chance to discover themselves. And to start getting a glimpse of how God made them and maybe where he's taking them. And to be part of that adventure is just the best.
It really is, because your kids are close to you. The fact that, your college students are calling you and, wanting your advice and, and texting me, and it's like, we would not have had that relationship had my child gone to high school away from me, and how precious that is. It really, and I know you probably tell parents that every day.
That they need to know, parents need to know you can do it, and that God has plans. And it can be lots of fun.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much again, Vicki. And
thanks for having me.
For joining us. Oh, we have Amy long ago. Sorry, Amy, I did not get to this, but showing the process of learning from your mistakes is so important. Yes, it is, definitely. And
that, kids know when we make mistakes, so we may as well talk about it.
You can't hide it from them. They know us better than anybody else.
And the humility of working through, so them learning it's okay to make a mistake and recover, and us learning we can make mistakes and recover, and to model that for our kids. It's a great comment. Yes, it is, definitely. All right, well, thank you for joining us, everybody, tonight on SPED Homeschool, our conversations. We this whole month we're talking about how to kind of change up your curriculum, next week, which will be back on Tuesday again. I'm traveling this week, so Monday had to be our broadcast tonight, but I'm interviewing Jim Hodges, who is the voice of the Henty books. And we're going to talk about how to incorporate audiobooks into your homeschool curriculum. And great idea. It's going to be a lot of fun. But this whole month, we're going to be talking to people that aren't curriculum vendors per se, but they're talking to us about curriculum and different ways to view it and use it. And so that's exciting. But we want to thank the Learning Disabilities Foundation of America for partially funding this broadcast. And for people like you, we are a 501c3, and we rely on your donations to keep going and to keep giving you resources. So thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great week. Keep the conversation going in our support group. And we'll see you again next week here on SPED Homeschool Conversations.
Bye.